Please welcome our guest speaker, Mr. Jim Ainsworth.
Thank you, Dr. Edelman, for that introduction. And thank you, graduates, families, and everyone here to celebrate this momentous occasion. I'm going to talk a little bit today about formulas and secrets and universal truths. Thomas Sand said that boredom is the feeling that everything is a waste of time. Serenity is the feeling that nothing is a waste of time. So if I could strike a bargain with you, I want you to choose serenity for the next few minutes, and I'll try not to waste your time. I dedicated my last book to the memory of my grandfather, saying, I wish I had known then what I know now. I don't mean that I wish I had known life's secrets, nor do I wish that I already possessed the wisdom that can only come from success and failure, tragedy and triumph. What would be the point of living if we knew it all from the start? What I mean is, I wish I had known better and sooner how to listen, how to pay respectful attention in order to build my own belief system sooner. Here's a little of the advice I received before I really started to pay attention. You have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so you should listen twice as much as you talk. Life is not fair. Deal with it. Successful people make it a habit of doing things other people don't want to do. Spend less than you earn, save and invest the difference. The workplace is a hierarchy, not a democracy. Accept responsibility for all aspects of your life. And the one I really did not want to hear on graduation day, your education is just beginning. With the great advances in technology since my graduation, especially during the last 2 decades, I am told I must say something about it. I don't want to, but here's my technology story. I arrived at my first job after graduation and took my junior accountant's seat, the old oak desk farthest away from the windows on the 7th floor of the oil and gas building in downtown Fort Worth. My first assignment was to go down into the basement and make copies of a report. You might think I was put off by such an assignment because I recently just had gotten a degree in accounting and finance, but I wasn't. I had bigger worries than that. In the basement, I saw this giant machine that I knew must have cost thousands of dollars. I had seen a Xerox machine before, but I didn't know how to use it. I walked around it a few times, afraid to touch the myriad of buttons for fear I would break this thing. I was about to panic when a lady about my mother's age walked in and stood behind me, waiting her turn. She saw my red face and asked if she could help. Oh, how I hated to admit that I didn't know how to use that machine. I worried for days whether she would tell my colleagues just how green I was. My point is, if I can advance from that point to writing a weekly blog and having my own website, I'm not too worried about a generation who probably had computers in their baby cribs. Most of you are probably texting right now. Here is what does worry me, that in a rush to keep pace, we will forget or never learn the basic principles that never change. Timeless and universal truths that have been recognized by great men and women for centuries. These truths are more important than technology, much more important. I learned these critical lessons, but I wish I had learned them sooner. I've told my wife, Jan, that I want these words on my tombstone. Could have done more, could have done it better, wish I had. If only I had known sooner. I had 8 jobs in 8 years after I graduated. 2 companies went bankrupt while I worked for them. A third fell shortly after I left. I got justifiably fired from another one. I felt like the cartoon character who walks around with a cloud over his head. I hope your first decade is better. But it is almost guaranteed that you will have a few missteps along the way and possibly some downright failures. What I discovered is that each of those failures had taught me invaluable lessons, lessons that led me to run a successful business of my own and even to advise other businesses and individuals. But in midlife, it seemed I had reached a plateau in my career and in my personal life, and that plateau was not very high. I tried opening branch offices of my business in 3 other towns. 2 failed and 1 struggled. But this was the era of learning leadership and business principles through books like In Search of Excellence, Thriving on Chaos, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and just about the time I jumped into shark-infested waters, Swim with the Sharks Without Being Eaten Alive. A year or so into reading and listening to these great trainers and writers, one of them told me to look in the mirror if I wanted to see the source of most of my problems I was whining about. So I asked the image in my mirror, how long before you start applying what you have learned to your own life? That look in the mirror led me to self-improvement and positive thinking folks like Zig Ziglar and Jim Rohn and Brian Tracy and many others. They convinced me that certain truths applied to a country boy from Klondike just like it did to the successful and famous. And they taught me how to set goals. But I was still a skeptic, dismissive of rah-rahs and platitudes. I wanted things to be proven by logic and empirical evidence. I sought the secret, the formula for success, while doubting that either existed. W. Clement Stone, a poor boy who made good, very good, took Og Mandino, an alcoholic, under his wing. Og went on to write some of the most successful business books ever published, became editor of Success magazine, and was one of the best motivational speakers I have ever heard. One of his books was called The Greatest Secret in the World. Mandino led me to Earl Nightingale in his beautiful baritone recorded message called The Strangest Secret, and the lights began to come on for me. Stone also introduced me to a book that virtually every salesman but few accountants knew by heart in those days. It was called Think and Grow Rich, written by Napoleon Hill and first published in 1937. Hill had been commissioned by Andrew Carnegie to research and write a book about why successful people succeeded. And Carnegie gave him access to some of the world's most accomplished people. Still, it took Hill 20 years to complete his book. My skeptical ears perked up when I heard that. In 20 years, surely Hill had found that formula that I was seeking. So now I had it. Hill's well-researched formula and Mandino and Nightingale's secrets. That led me to Dr. Joseph Murphy's book, The Power of the Subconscious Mind, the Maxwell Maltz Psycho-Cybernetics, and the Norman Vincent Peale's The Power of Positive Thinking. They proved to me the connection between mind and body. My career took a new direction as I took their ideas and weaved them into the message I was conveying to the relatively new financial planning profession as part of my new company. One night in Canadian Texas, the oasis of the Panhandle, I had another awakening. I did a presentation for local CPA Mike Gardner. Mike invited all of his clients to the community room of his church to hear me. After the program, I discovered a set of my handouts had been left in a chair. They had been scribbled all over. Beside each of my formulas and secrets, someone had written a biblical verse. Mike's pastor had occupied that chair. And at Mike's house, we looked up the verses. The man had found biblical prose that espoused every principle in my handout. So as my plane took flight out of Amarillo, I looked out the window at the desolate but beautiful Panhandle landscape and understood what Ralph Waldo Emerson meant when he said, "All my best ideas were stolen by the ancients." Humility settled on me like a warm quilt on a cold night. Alexander Graham Bell, the Stephen Jobs of his day, said, "What this power is, I cannot say. All I know is that it exists, and it becomes available only when a man is in that state of mind in which he knows exactly what he wants and is fully determined not to quit until he finds it." I now knew what that power was. I told about my encounter with the preacher to one of the acclaimed trainers and authors I was following, about my discovery that his ideas and others were as old as time, about the source of the subconscious, about the connection between affirmations and prayer. His response, "It took you long enough, Ainsworth." I asked, "Why didn't you just say so in the beginning?" He turned to me and he said, "Would you have believed me, or would you have turned away? You were focused on results, not principles. You wanted to know the what of things, not the why. You wanted proof instead of truth." Well, that sent me back to the mirror and a serious look at whether their methods had worked. I was surprised to find that many of my goals had already been accomplished. Maybe not exactly when or how I had envisioned, but accomplished nonetheless. I had just been going too fast to see it. As I look back at some of the irrational, out of character, and risky decisions I had made, the only explanation possible was that I had been guided. When I left the past, guidance set me on the path again. All I had to do was ask. I understood then that life is lived forward, but understood backward. So what are these universal truths? I can't list them all here today, but in a quarter century of conducting thousands of client interviews and asking about their fondest hopes, dreams, and aspirations, one word was repeated most often, and that word was freedom. Freedom to pursue life's path with joy. We all have a purpose in life, a call, if you will. Find yours. It's okay to find the correct path by making mistakes, even by taking the wrong path for a while. In America's unequal system of free enterprise, you should search for your particular way of providing value, whether in a good or service. Money will follow. When you find your path, follow it and ask for help to keep on the path. The only thing that stands between you and what you want is the will to try and the faith to believe that it is possible. Don't delay, as I did, in finding your purpose. Find folks who have been there and done that and emerged as successes on a personal and financial level. Study what they did. Read their work. Listen to them. Seek their advice. Put another way, Jim Rohn said, find out what failures do and don't do it. Success formulas in secret have been known since ancient times, but it's in the implementation of the concepts that the rubber meets the road. And one quality possessed by every person in Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich book was self-discipline. You must choose to do what you should do when you should do it, whether you feel like it or not. Self-discipline is also what keeps you from doing what you shouldn't do. You should read at least 1 hour a day, and no, tweets and texts don't count. We need longer attention spans, not shorter. If you really desire to be successful in anything, you must engage in deliberate practice in that thing. Enjoy the little things in life, because someday you may look back and see that they were really the big things. Go wide and deep. And now I don't mean football, I mean life. You may have within you the capacity for several careers and endeavors, but if you must choose between wide and deep, go deep. Daniel H. Burnham said, make no little plans. They have no magic to stir men's blood. Make big plans. Aim high in hope and work. One more story. Renowned author and investor Alexander Green knows about universal truths. He was browsing in a bookstore with a friend when they encountered Nicholas Taleb, the best-selling author of The Black Swan. All three were speaking at a financial conference close by. Nicholas announced that he was planning a book on religion, and that prompted an argument with Green's friend as to whether a particular theological point was true. Nicholas pointed to the fiction section of the bookstore and said, how about all those books over there? Are they true? And the friend said, of course not. They're novels. But Green stepped into the conversation and said, yes, but they are full of universal truths. And Nicholas smiled with satisfaction and said, exactly. In Green's book, Beyond Wealth, he says, seek enlightenment wherever you can find it. It doesn't matter whether the source is ancient, modern, mythical, foreign, mystical, or verified by the latest scientific findings. It only matters that it's true, and that it has some practical application for skillful living. In his timeless book, As a Man Thinketh, James Allen said, cherish your visions, cherish your ideals, cherish the music that stirs in your heart, the beauty that forms in your mind, the loveliness that drapes your purest thoughts. If you will remain true to them, your world will at last be built. I leave you with my own words to remember when those times when you become discouraged. Enjoy these days of struggle the best you can, because almost surely you will look back on them with fondness. Try to hear the music that sings in all of our souls. On some days, success will seem to reside on a mountaintop that reaches through the clouds, a mountain you sometimes tire of climbing. But then there will be other days when success visits like a firefly at twilight, elusive and distant at once, then brushing your cheek or resting on the back of your hand, too swift to touch. Someday a firefly will land in your palm. Don't close your hand around it, though, because the light will go out. Allow yourself to feel the thrill of success changing from stranger to friend, then let it fly away so you can find it again. Thank you.